Live from downtown Huntsville, Alabama. Good to see you guys today. We'd like to talk about the new features that are going to be featured actually in the mixer, the Pro Mixer. These are going to be at AES, so you can play with them here in a couple of weeks and all, but we'd like to just show them to you and show you what the differences between the original version that we're shipping now and the new version are that we're shipping, well, pretty much now. So with that,
and also we're going to show you a sneak preview of the iOS app that Donnie is working on here, so we'll kind of show you some of the features of that, and also just some general information about personal monitoring systems that we get hit up with a lot, so we'll kind of address those. But I guess first, Max, you want to go ahead and show them what is new and compare it with the old mixer. I'll zoom the camera in.
Sure will. Of course, the Pro Mixer, here we go. I have two of them sitting here, and you'll excuse our real professional writing here. This one has the new firmware. This one has the old firmware, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with. And the way you can tell them apart very easily is just by when you power them up. If you take a look at this guy, this is the original mixer. Upon power up, this is the boot sequence. Okay. The new one is totally different. So we had to change things to make it look cool. So here you go. And it takes a little bit longer. So if you see that sequence, you've got some new firmware. Okay. And on the old one, on the the original firmware, basically you had all your your functions like your pan. I'm sure you're familiar with this, and of course you can link. If you link, of course you can go to a stereo pair anywhere you wish, and they will track each other. All right. On the new one, things look a little bit different. When you go to pan, notice we have all this different stuff here, and these two guys are just regular, they are not linked. So when you go to the link function, see we have everybody flashing, these guys are linked. Of course if you just hit it, now it's unlinked and it's just, as normal. But what this is doing is, rather than just having a full left-right spread, what we can now do is, when we're in this mode, you can literally pick where in the spectrum you want it. In other words, you want it straight up the middle? Do you want it to go to the left or the right? And then you can actually, I can't see where I'm going here, there we are. You can pick the width. So if you're going this way, this is a full left-right stereo spread because all the LEDs are lit. What you can do is actually bring it in, like adjust your Q and make it very small, and if you want to, and this is the really great thing, especially for folks on stage, you can reverse it. So in other words, you can take drums left, drums right, or keyboards and all that, and actually put it the way you need it. That was requested, and we managed to pull that one off, so that's a really cool feature.
Well, we've actually got this connected so that the users can hear it. If you want to demo that stereo spread.
Sure. Which one?
Now, I do think that last time we did this, I will mention that Facebook actually converts all of the audio to mono.
Correct.
To save, I guess, storage space. So some of these things probably won't come through on stereo, but I guess you can kind of get the idea. But at least you can hear our tracks that are coming through. If you bring that master up, we'll make sure that it's balanced with the microphone so you can still hear us.
That's the end of the song, of course.
Yeah, so we'll start it over again.
You just hit one, I think.
Here we go.
Yeah, there's some.
Where's which one's give me a vocal or something? I'm not sure where anything is.
This is down here. They're not up yet. I'm gonna turn up drums.
And that's drums. Okay, let's get rid of everybody but drums, which is up here. Let's just do it that way. Drums will come in just a second. Hopefully. There's the click track, just so you know where we are.
Yeah. There's your drums.
There we go. Alright, these guys are indeed linked. So when you go to the pan page, this one happens to be reversed. So basically we can take it. I don't know if you can hear that. That is dead up the middle. That's basically mono. And now we're going to spread it out. And we can literally take that spread and put it anywhere in the spectrum we want. Like the drummer's not in the middle of the stage, just put him about right there. And of course this can be saved to your presets just like anything else, just like it always has been. I don't know if you can hear that or not. I sure can. And it reverses it. But that's one of the features that we were asked for, and got it implemented for you. One thing that was on the old mixer that is on the new one that I'll bet nobody knows is out there, now that this song is playing, and we didn't even put it in the manual. Say that you're in the church or your house of worship or somebody, and you're trying to figure out if you're getting a signal to the mixer. All you got to do, and this is a little hidden thing, all you do is hit the aux button and hold it. And you'll notice that wherever you're getting a signal, we're letting you know, oh yeah, well we are getting the click track, it is making it to the mixer. Now all of it together, down here on the master, it's giving you a true RMS level of how much you're actually getting to the mixer. So in other words, when we start really turning stuff up on this guy, notice the RMS level goes way up. So it's a really good indication of really what you've got going on, and just makes things simpler. And that's on the old one, and I guess nobody really knew it was there. The new one, of course, does the same thing. The new firmware does the exact same thing. So, and this is pretty much maxed out on there. Another thing on the new one that the old one did not have, we were asked for the ability to do things like, in other words, a lot of sometimes you just got to solo things. In other words, say you want to hear what the bass player is doing because you can't figure it out and you guys are learning a song. So basically, say that we want to be able to solo this channel. All you do is hold the aux and you're soloing whatever channel you hit. And you can go around the mixer and just solo whatever you need to do. Notice your RMS level is down here. And you can actually hear what you need to hear. In order to get out of it, just press a button and you're back to the volume page. So again, just hit aux, hit a knob, whichever knob you want to solo, and then you can go wherever you need to hear what you need to hear. That's a really cool feature.
Bring your level up a little bit more.
Solo in place.
Yeah, it is solo in place, so it's taking whatever level.
There's I just soloed the click track. There's the drums. Had to get the guitar player. But it's a really cool feature. Another thing we did with this, and this is really cool. On the old mixer, or on the old firmware, the intercom, when you hit intercom, basically whoever hit the intercom, that person was the only one on there. In other words, everybody had to listen. And nobody else could hit intercom in order to interject or to say something or get a conversation going. With the new firmware, when you hit intercom, say you triple tap it and we're on, 4 people can get on there and actually, talk things over or do whatever you need to do. And when a 5th person comes up, they can knock somebody off by hitting the intercom. So in other words, you can have 4 people talking at the same time, which is was something that was requested. One thing I want to point out here, though, with the new firmware versus the old firmware, say all your mixers are new, notice that this guy is not looking at that intercom. If you have a mixer with the original firmware, it will not see the intercom until it's updated. And this is true either way. In other words, if I hit this intercom, see this guy doesn't even recognize it. Well, it's the same thing here. So it's just something to be aware of. All your mixers should have the same version number. And I think Nason might be able to put a little bit more into that. I think we had, hopefully there's going to be the ability soon that if a mixer, say that somebody comes to sit in and they have their own pro mixer, if they hook it to the system, okay, anything in the network, it's going to find that mixer and it'll just update it to make sure that it's okay. That is coming. But you know, of course, these things take time, but that is on the horizon. All right. So, the other neat thing about the new version of firmware is it does enable the Footswitch functions. So, in other words, if you want to use the Footswitch, basically you have to have the new firmware. Now, I can tell you this: if all your mixers are the old stuff, and you want to get the Footswitch, when we ship you the Footswitch, it comes with a little programming card, which I don't have one of, and all you do is stick it in the side of the mixer in order to program it, and it'll give you that Footswitch function. So, and we're doing a little bit of a cleanup here, but basically it'll give you that Footswitch function. So. And that little card, it's just has a little single IC on it, just goes in the side. The upgrade takes all of, oh my goodness, maybe 2 minutes. It's a done deal. Now that upgrade doesn't include any of these newer features. It just does, you know, it takes care of the Footswitch for you. And we'll have all this stuff at the AES show in a couple of weeks, and you can see with it and, you know, play with it and compare them. Okay, so. As far as the mixer goes, I don't know if we have any questions or anything, but as far as the mixers go, that's really the big changes. Now, other changes that occurred with it, the new firmware gives you the ability to do something that the old version won't, and that is to work with the app that Donnie's working on, which he's about to show you. And this is so cool, and it's just really amazing what this is capable of. So I'll let Donnie get in here, and I'll shut up a while.
Hey guys, alright, I'm going to give you a real quick overview of where we're at with our new iOS app. Not going to show you everything right now, but you know, because we're going to be rolling things out in stages, but the first thing we'll be coming out with is ability to basically emulate any mixer on the network. So when you first boot it up, you can pop on over to your list view, and it automatically populates any mixer that's on your network. So, oh, that's good. We're breaking things in the lab right now. So, you can select any mixer, and then actually have control over that specific mixer. So right now, you know, I picked mixer number 2. I'm not sure which mixer number 2 is. Now you can name them, but when you first open the app, you know, and you've never named them before, you need to know which one's which. All you gotta do is tap it, puts it into identify mode, and you can see the corresponding mixer blinks. Okay, so I know I'm controlling that mixer right there. You have full bidirectional control of each mixer now. So if I turn up the master on here, and even though we're streaming video right now, it's pretty much real time. So you have full volume control. Of course, you can switch pages, you know, twist knobs, do everything just like you can do with the physical mixer. And it basically emulates it exactly how it should. So, a really neat thing that's going to be very nice for the future is with the app, you can actually update our firmware just by simply opening the menu. See if you can see that. it grabs the latest firmware from our website. You can download it. It's a pretty quick download. And then install it, which I'm going to quit the install right now, but you can start installing, and you can update your firmware just like that. And you can do that with every mixer on the network all at the same time. Super simple. One great thing this will allow you to do is also name these channels, and everyone with an app who could be controlling their own mixer receives each of the channel names, and they each have control over their individual mixer. Now, this could also come in handy if you were the engineer and say someone gets stuck in a rut, you know, drummer, he's muddied up his mix a bit, as drummers usually do. You can actually take control over their mixer and mix it for them. You know, we typically recommend that the engineer keep a mixer at his station, and then he can basically assign the drummer's mixer to his mixer too if he wanted to. And that's one thing that we're coming out with. It'll be a remote control feature. So engineer can take over anyone's mixer, mix it for them, and the corresponding mixer will actually receive that in real time. So that's probably all we're going to show on the app for right now.
Talk about the session manager.
Not yet.
Okay.
That is one thing that this app will also accomplish. So you'll have full control over your mixers. You could even leave your mixers off stage if you wanted to and just mix with the app, you know. But it will also serve as a session manager for recording studios. You know, if you have a tracking session going on, you can basically capture that session, which will save everyone's mix. And then next time you pull up the app, you can pull up that session, and everyone's mix comes right back to where it was. So that's kind of that's coming. So we won't get into that today, like I said. So
Say hi to Gatai. He says pretty cool.
pretty cool, Gatai. You're pretty cool. Awesome.
So did we cover everything? All the new features?
Yes.
Look at our list here. Make sure we talked about everything. You did show the boot up sequence, how it's different.
Yes.
All right. And
Oh, by the way, when we're at AES in 2 weeks, if anybody in the area that happens to have a Pro system, if you bring your mixers to us, we'll update them for you for free right there. So, just a cool thing. So, you know, if anybody's around, come on down and see us, booth 627.
because otherwise, for the first update, actually, the mixer will have to be updated with a card that you slide into the side of the mixer. There's a little card slot there. So the first update actually will be a little card that looks like this that slides in. From that update forward, the app will be able to update firmware. But the very first update has to be done with this because when we first designed the mixer, we didn't have an app. And I don't know if you showed, you know, you can definitely have multiple apps going at the same time. So, you know, if different people, if you want to have the mixers off stage and then use the app to control it without having the mixer, say you got a bank of wireless in-ear monitor transmitters off stage.
Which is exactly a situation that we've heard that people are excited about this.
So you could have the app control the mixer. The mixer could stay off stage if you don't want it to be on stage. And that would definitely make that happen. And there's really no limit, foreseeable limit, because basically everything's done by broadcast. If one app is requesting for information from the mixers, and there's basically only one app has to request that, all the other apps can receive simultaneously. So there's really no limit there. I guess that's about everything with the new features and also the iOS app. The other thing I guess I wanted to kind of talk about is just personal monitor mixing in general. We get a lot of questions from people asking for some things, wondering why we designed the system the way that we did. And what I'd like to say about that is we basically listened to our customers over the last decade with the original Hearback system, this guy right here, and he's still around. So we wanted to know, you know, what did you like, what did you not like, what do you want to see on the new system, and one of the things that we heard from a lot of the engineers who use these systems is that they really like how simple it is. And when a musician's trying to perform, you know, their main focus is to play their instrument, not to mix sound. They're not the engineer. Unfortunately, there's a lot of engineers who are not actually using our system that ask us these questions. They wonder why we don't have, you know, 64 channels, and why we don't have EQ, and why we don't have reverb. Well, the simple answer to that is all of our customers who like our system told us, please, please, please do not add those features to the new system, because that basically just allows the musicians to get into trouble. It's too much control. Their job is not there to engineer the sound. They're supposed to play. The whole premise with this idea is that these channels are already EQ'd. The dynamics are already controlled. Your sound engineer is responsible for that. So these are supposed to be stems or aux sends or matrix outputs or submixes from your console. That way, all the musician has to worry about is how much. And with the new system, stereo placement with the panning control. You don't need to get into this, EQing and reverb, because basically they'll end up digging themselves into a hole. So that's what a lot of people said was, we've used the competition's product, and 9 times out of 10, when the session starts, we've got to go out there and put their headphones on and help them mix, because they've dug themselves into a hole and now they can't hear anything. Well, the other thing is the number of channels. Just because you've got 64 channels or more on your system doesn't mean you really need to have every single one of those channels coming to the musician. That just honestly doesn't make any sense. Try mixing 64 channels as a sound engineer, which I have done for over a decade, running my own sound business. That's a pretty big deal, even if your full job is just running sound. So if you're trying to play an instrument and mix 64 channels of audio, good luck. Good luck trying to get separation there. It is just going to be very difficult. So instead of doing that, the idea is that you give the musicians the main mix that the audience is hearing, if this is used in a live application, or if it's in a studio, this would basically kind of be the rough mix that the engineer is working on. If it's mono, it's on one channel. If it's stereo, it's on 2 channels. You basically start from there. So they start up, there's your whole mix right there on one knob. Okay, well, now they need to hear, they're the drummer, they need to hear more of the bass. Okay, so if you're in the rhythm section, then you might have the bass, the guitar, keys, things like that broken out on some of these individual knobs. And if you do things that way, then honestly, that's enough channels to get you through. 16 is almost kind of ridiculous. In fact, interviewing all of our customers who use this system, they said 12 channels is really about all you really will ever need if you do this the correct way. So we decided to go to 16. That really kind of made the math easier when you're dealing with ADAT and so forth. So the idea is even this system can work well in even large applications, because if you start with your main mix on one knob, then you basically give one system to each section. So for example, your rhythm section, they would have the full mix plus the different rhythm instruments, your bass, your guitars, your keys. You would have another system for your vocalist. It would have the main mix. It would have the things they need to hear, like basically all the different vocalists broken out. They want to be able to do harmonies and key off of each other, so they've got the ability to turn up and down the different vocal microphones. And then say you've got an orchestra. Well, depending on how big it is, you can have one system for them, or you could even break it into different sections of the orchestra. Again, doing the same idea. Your main mix is on one knob, and the more me's are on the individual knobs. So this idea is really making it easier on your user, because they're not having to take and mix a ridiculous number of channels. They're basically only having to deal with what they really need. And that is basically turn up the main mix until you can hear everything. And then if you need to hear more of something that's a little louder than it is in the mix, then you can turn that up. So it's basically just planning ahead of time. There's no limit to how many of these systems you can have running simultaneously. A lot of people think you only have one system, but that you got to get past that. Really, the idea is if you have a large group, have multiple systems. That way, each of these systems can have a different set of channels. The same thing can be done with the HearBack Pro. We have the bandwidth on this wire to do 512 channels if we want to. But what are you going to do with 512 channels? If we gave you access to 512 channels, there's two things we would have to do, or one of two things we would have to do. We would either have to set this up to where you had multiple banks, but you can already see the problem there. Now you got to do bank switching, and what bank are you on? I can tell you that in the 10 years that I ran my sound business, I used a Roland VM7200 digital console. Even after 10 years of using it, it was very difficult knowing where you're at. You would have to train yourself to look at what bank you were on, and even after 10 years, I would still make mistakes and be on the wrong bank and grab a fader. Now I was controlling a monitor mix instead of the main mix. So banks are kind of a dangerous thing, especially if you're focused on trying to play an instrument and having to pay attention to what bank you're on. It's not good. It's better to have a knob that does not change what channel it is. When we designed the Pro, we thought about doing 8 knobs and doing an A and a B bank. But we said no. This was actually very expensive to add 16 individual knobs, but we thought about it and it was the right way to do it. So we decided we needed to actually put an individual knob per channel. That was just the best way. If you're playing an instrument and you need to turn something up, you just need to be able to grab a knob. You don't need to be able to go through a menu, change banks, that sort of thing. So the banks would be one approach to having more channels. The other way would be to actually have to go in and configure the routing on each mixer. But again, that doesn't make a lot of sense because now you're going to have, for the engineer's standpoint, every mixer in your system is going to be different now. And you're going to have to go look at an app just to figure out what is on each channel. It's not very user-friendly that way. In fact, if you're going to do something like that, why not just do multiple systems like we talked about just a minute ago? Put a different hub for each group. Then you can actually assign different instruments to different channels, and then that whole group has the main mix on channel 1. The rhythm section is going to have bass guitar on 2, guitar on 3, keys on 4, so forth. So instead of getting into all this complex routing, our approach is trying to keep this very user friendly. Bring in your channels to the hub. Whatever comes in is a one-to-one correspondence with what is on each of these channels. So if you come in channel 1, that's going to be on channel 1 here. There's no routing and no bank switching. If there is a big demand for it in the future, we may look at doing more channels, but if we do that, we want to make sure that it is user friendly because that is our whole premise behind our design, is keeping this thing very dead simple to use.
Shorty's asking for a short recap too. Let me get a second.
Okay. Recap.
Yep.
So we can do a recap, I guess.
I'd like to throw something in while we're on the channel issue. The idea of using separate systems, or like say a band hub and a vocal hub, that type of thing. Our mixback, which is a 16 by 2 by 2 by 12 monitor mixer, was designed with that exact same premise. So that you can use 2 of the HearBack 8-channel systems to do that exact same thing. And it has worked extremely well over the years, and it's just not that complex to use at all. It's very simple to set up, and once it's set up, you're done. So anyway, we'll have to throw that in there.
But that's really our approach with our design is giving the users what they want. And the people who are purchasing these systems from us are generally the sound engineers that are going to be running the system, and we listen to what they want, and that's what we've implemented. So instead of trying to play the game of looking at what some of our competitors are doing and just adding pointless features, we don't want to do that. We would rather look at the problems at hand that need to be overcome and trying to build a good solution for those problems, instead of just adding lots of bells and whistles that probably will never get used, or if they're used, they can, you know, cause more problems than they're worth. So the good thing is that this system is built modular, so we are looking at doing a lot of different things. We have the card slot that can be used for anything that we like. We're looking at a lot of really cool features for that. If we do get into doing any kind of processing, that would probably be the way that we do it.
Waves card.
Yeah, possibly, you know, we're looking at maybe doing something with waves to allow processing, which we already do have the waves card coming out that goes in the hub, you know, just like our other cards here. And with that waves card, you can definitely do inline processing with all the stems that are coming to the mixer. But you know, taking it a step further would be to have maybe processing per mixer.
Let's talk about the hub.
You want to talk about the hub?
Yeah, they're asking about the hub.
I'll let Donnie step in and talk about the hub a little bit.
All right. So let's see if I can. Can you zoom the camera out? Some?
Yeah.
That would help. I can't fit the whole hub on here.
All right.
So the hub is the head unit. This is basically all your ins and outs. Single rack unit space. We built it modular, so you have 4 card slots here on the back. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then your power and bus connections right here. So since we made it modular, we built the card slots just so we could have any flavor of digital. You know, we could come in analog, and right now we do have the analog inputs. We have Dante, which is bidirectional. All the digital cards are bidirectional. Dante, we have the Wave sound grade card. We have a AES card and an ADAT card. And
We're running
do we have any that we could grab? I know all we have in here right now is some analog
I
cards.
don't know if I can zoom in on it, but
All right.
Yeah, we're actually using a ADAT card right now to get the stems out to the mixers
yeah, it's
themselves.
kind of sideways there. You can't really see it very well.
Yeah, I don't think we can turn it too much. But so you've got on the ADAT card, you actually have ADAT 1 through 8 in, ADAT 1 through 8 out, ADAT 9 through 16 in, and ADAT 9 through 16 out. And we actually have 2 RJ45 jacks on the back, which are compatible with our old Here bus technology to get 8 channels to a legacy hub. So that way you can actually interface our new Pro model with your existing legacy gear. So that's the ADAT card. The AES card looks similar to the analog input cards. It uses the DB25, you know, DA88 style connector. Can you even get it to focus on it?
Yeah, sometimes has a problem focusing.
Yeah.
But you have options as far as how you want to get in and out, and that was our whole idea was don't limit it to one single flavor per hub. We don't want you to have to buy a whole nother hub just to run analog or run digital. You get to build your own and choose how you want to do it to match the other gear in your lab. So on the front of it, we actually have 16 LEDs for metering. You have your sample rate indicator. We go anywhere from 44.1 to 192. And due to the nature of our architecture, we actually run at 1/4 of a millisecond latency. And that's if you're coming in analog. It's even lower if you come in digital. So maybe we could do a quick overview of, or a recap of what we've talked about.
Some of the new features.
Yeah.
All right, recap. I guess we could talk about the firmware features with the new firmware. It hasn't technically been released yet. I think we've shipped it to a few people, and we're going to be offering it at the AES show. If people want to bring their mixers, we'll update them there on the spot.
All right, there it is.
Go back down here to the mixers. If I can get it, I'll zoom out
There you
a
go.
bit.
So on the mixer, the new firmware features are in pan. Now, what we have is, let's see here.
If you want to turn the tracks on, I can give you some headphones,
Let's-
Max.
There we go. Thank you, sir. So I can figure out what I'm doing. There we go. We can actually, when we link, we can actually put it anywhere in the spectrum we wish, and also pick the Q on it, and even reverse. So let's get rid of these guys and see if we can pull that up. There's our drums. Oh, Donnie's going to control it, I think. Not sure. No? There we go. All right, see, we can move it left to right, whatever we want to do.
I am controlling.
You are controlling.
Donnie.
Donnie, yeah, I'm sitting here turning it, and Donnie's controlling the thing. And of course, we can reverse or do whatever we want. The next feature we put into it was a solo feature. So if you just hit the aux button and touch any knob, you are now soloing that knob. So I'm listening to the click track,
And you see the, yeah.
and you see your RMS level down here of what's happening. So
show if you, when you touch that level down there,
Your master.
the master, that, grab it and move it, yeah, there you go. If you move it quickly, it'll show you where you're at. It's a solo in place, so it's going to start off wherever that channel was in your mix, unless it's less than 25%. If it's lower than 25%, we bring it up to 25%, because if you go to solo a channel and the channel's not turned up, then you're going to maybe think nothing's there when the problem is that it was just turned down to begin with. So it's solo in place as long as it's above 25%.
okay. And then the other feature we added was with the intercom, you can get 4 people talking at the same time without kicking each other off. So you can actually have a conversation with no problem. Again, I just want to warn you, the only thing, if you have some mixers that have the new firmware and one that has the old firmware, the intercoms will not talk back and forth to each other. Everything else will work, everything's okay, it's just that this guy won't see this guy or vice versa.
So John Russell was asking about the latency. He said that a quarter of a millisecond is crazy enough, but what is the lowest latency digital? Actually, we haven't measured that yet. That's something we need to do, because the quarter of a millisecond is with the analog to digital conversion on the analog card, and then it's also with the digital to analog conversion on the mixer. So those things add quite a bit of time. I know that our actual network latency is down in the microseconds, but there is a little bit of latency due to buffering, which the way we get away with such low latency is we don't buffer very much. We basically will only allow up to 8 samples in the buffer, because any more than that is just basically going to incur too much latency. So the whole idea with our design was to get the audio from point A to point B as fast as possible. If it's lost, too bad, just move on. So, you know, our system is very robust with the way it's designed. Every single packet that goes across the Ethernet is an individual audio sample. So if one packet for some reason gets corrupted or lost, so what? It just moves on. In fact, you won't even notice it, because it'll just move on to the next sample. So unless you start getting tons and tons and tons of corrupted data, even then you'll still get the audio. What it'll in sense sound like is basically like you have a radio station that's not quite tuned in just right, you know, but you'll still be able to hear the enough of the audio to get by. So, you know, even if somebody is beaming like crazy amounts of electromagnetic data at your Cat5 cable and corrupting your audio packets, you're still going to have a robust enough system to monitor with, which, you know, as long as the system is used standalone, those types of things never really happen. You usually never have lost data. But
We had a question about pricing and how much this stuff runs. Basically, we're very competitive. This is MSRP. A mixer, as you see it here, just a single mixer is $6.99. Now a hub, depending on how you load it, can vary a lot here. But I can tell you this: look at it this way. You can get a 4-pack, which is 4 of the mixers. The hub loaded, with your choice, whether analog input, ADAT, AES, Dante, whatever you need. Okay, and a network card, and all the connecting cables, and that retails $58.50. Now that's retail. Map pricing on this thing, any one of those with any of those flavors is about $4,600, and this is U.S. pricing. So it's competitive, and we're trying everything we can to build as many features into it as we can in order to even make it, more appealing, as it were. We got all the things like the Footswitch, different ways to hook it up. The network card is, the network box, the distro, is there. There's so many different ways that you can handle this thing.
Yeah, actually,
As a matter of fact, I think Donnie's got a distro box here.
yeah, I do. Let's see if I can get it out.
You got to excuse us. Half of our stuff's already in the show on its way to LA, so we.
Yeah, we're already packed for the AES show, so.
So, this is the network distro box. It's unloaded right now, and actually doesn't have the back end either.
That gives you an
There we
idea
go.
that.
Let me get that one.
Well, this is a proto.
Yeah, okay.
That's what we got.
That's good enough. Okay, so here's the distro box. Obviously, this is just the shell. So you have one RJ45 connector on the back side, and that's your uplink. And then the same power connector that is used for the hub. And you can actually populate your existing network card, or even order this box with an extra network card on the front side, and that gives you 8 mixer connections. And that makes it really easy, for example, to run one single Cat6 cable out of your hub from front of house up to the stage, come right into that guy, and then break out to 8 mixers on stage, or even daisy chain these together for really an unlimited amount of mixers.
And if you're going to do that, you don't even have to have a network card in your hub. You can come out of the H-bus output connection, which Donnie's grabbing the hub here. This H-bus output connection is basically, that's the same data that goes to the mixer. The only difference is that connection just does not have power. The mixers use PoE power, power over Ethernet power, and that connection does not have power. So if you actually put a power injector in line with that H-bus out connection, you could actually plug a mixer directly into that connection right there. So from front of house, you could just run a cable from that up to stage and then have the distro box. And then you can come out of those the outputs of that distro box and go to other distro boxes or mixers. It doesn't really matter. You just kind of connect everything up however you feel. It's basically just like hooking up a computer network, because that's basically what it is. It's gigabit Ethernet. It makes it very flexible. And in fact, you can use our network box for other applications. It's just a gigabit Ethernet connection with PoE plus power. And I should stress that it's PoE plus. That's 30 watts per channel. Regular PoE power is 15 watts. So if you ever have an application where you need that kind of power, you could purchase one of our network boxes for that. I mean, it's definitely tested with Dante protocol. It works with that. It does not work with AVB protocol. But the other thing, too, we were talking about pricing a minute ago. One thing I would like to say is that the idea behind the HearBack Pro is we want this product to be a product that's going to be around for a while. We want this to be the last monitoring system that you have to buy. We don't plan to build something new in a few years from now. What we plan on doing is building more accessories and more cards and building on this structure, basically. So this is kind of our platform, if you will, and we're just going to keep building on this. I mean, even the old system, this has been around for about 13 years now. We still sell plenty of these guys. In fact, here in the next few years, you'll be seeing this guy get a facelift. But as far as the functionality, it'll be functionally the same.
Questions here?
Yeah, a couple more questions.
Couple more questions? Can it work with a SoundGrid card? Actually,
Hesitant to say.
yeah, not as it is right now. We might be able to build something that can house the SoundGrid card, fitting the same box. But right now, the card that goes into the end simply allows it to connect up to our network. If we built a different insert, use the same chassis, we might be able to do something with SoundGrid. I guess the question would be how would we use that if we were to build a housing for a SoundGrid card? We'd have to kind of think about that. We are thinking of some applications though where we can put or put one SoundGrid card in the hub and then bridge it with other protocols. For example, like we've had some people ask about, hey, I've got a console that has a Dante card, but there's not a SoundGrid card, but I want to use the SoundGrid processing. So we have been looking into doing basically make a bridge out of our hub where you put the SoundGrid card, in like this slot here, and then you got the Dante in this slot. Right now we're set up to do 16 channels, but we've already talked to both Audinate and Waves about we'd have to do a firmware change on their two cards plus on our hub, but we definitely could accommodate up to 64 channels bi-directional back and forth. As it sits right now, you can use our hub as a bridge for 16 channels because that's our current clocking and architecture. So you could actually go 16 channels of analog to SoundGrid or Dante or AES to SoundGrid or whatever. Any of our formats of our cards can be used to bridge between them from slot A, which is these two slots, to slot B, which is these two slots. We have any other questions?
Yeah. PoE should help for the PSU for building a sound recorder.
Oh, that's very interesting. Okay. Yeah, the power over Ethernet. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, well, there's a lot of possibilities with our system, and that's what's so cool about it being modular and having the ability to do these cards, is that we keep coming up with new ideas of things that we can do with it. In fact, when we first came up with this concept of putting our network card in here, we started to think, well, what other cards could we put in here, and how could we use them? Could we put a Dante card in here, but have a Thunderbolt interface to your computer? So now you basically have a Dante to Thunderbolt adapter. Something like that we could definitely look at doing. Basically, whatever we have a demand for, we'll look into building it.
So they'd like to actually hear some audio and see what it's like to mix if you were in a show.
Okay. Well, one thing, we can play some audio through it. We were a little while ago. The only downside is that the streaming on Facebook is mono. Even though we're sending stereo, we've been monitoring the feed from Facebook, and it turns out that they downsample everything to mono. So we can definitely put some audio through, but just keep in mind it's not going to be stereo. It's just going to be a summed mono feed.
Yeah,
so
you got it.
Okay.
Get some headphones.
All right. So basically,
I want to start with a blank slate.
Yeah, I'll start with a blank slate. This is a little shortcut to that. If you hold down the pan and aux for 2 seconds, the lights blink. It basically wipes out the mixer, except for what you might have saved to your presets. Those are untouched. But this puts everything to 0, puts your pans in the center, unlinks all your channels, turns your aux down, turns your master volume down. So I'll start with bringing the master up. And I know that these first 2 channels are linked. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, which links them. And I did that by holding down the pan button for a few seconds until all the lights start to blink. And this is linking mode. If I grab a knob and turn it either direction, it toggles between linked, and that's what those 2 indicate. Whereas all these ones that are green with the center dot, just think of that as being a mono. It's just straight up. And these, you can kind of think of it, it's showing you that it's a left and right pair. So if I hit the button, come back to volume, and one cool thing to point out is that there's a 30-second timer. I believe it's 30 or 45 seconds.
30 seconds.
30 seconds. So if you're not touching this, if you're in this mode or you're in linking mode, eventually what's going to happen is if you forget and you go back and you're playing your instrument, it's going to go back to that. That way, volume is your priority. So I can turn this up. This is our drums, and you see that you can turn either knob, and both channels track together because they're linked. Now, this channel is bass, it's mono, and I didn't link that. And this one's the metronome.
All of our other stems are stereo, though, other than 3 and 4.
Yeah, so what I'm going to do, right now these are the only 2 mono stems, so I'm going to go ahead and link these other stems together. Turn down the metronome because that's kind of annoying. I think vocals are down here on 15 and 16. That's electric guitar, I think. Strings. Piano. That's one acoustic guitar. I think this other one's the other acoustic. And the song is about to loop. Donnie's going to loop it, start it over for us. And so now you got a lot of things going on, and at this point is when you would want to probably get into kind of panning things around so that you get a little more separation. Unfortunately, with this live stream, since it's not stereo, you're not going to really be able to hear most of the stereo placement. You're just going to be getting a mono summation of it. So with our new firmware we were showing earlier, we added the ability to do stereo panning. Before, when you would link channels together, it would do this right here, and you couldn't do anything with it. It was a hard left and a hard right. Only the mono channels could be panned. So now, with the new firmware, you can pan your mono channels just the same, but now you can also pan the stereo. The first knob is what controls your pan of both channels together. So if you go here to the left, basically channel 1 is going to be hard left and channel 2 is going to be straight up. And then if you go over here, channel 1 is now straight up and the other channel 2 is going to be hard pan to the right. That's only if this width is wide. If you start making it narrow, this kind of collapses. If I'm like this, it's going to start collapsing these together until you get to here, and then that's basically mono and they're both hard panned right. Now we also have the ability to go to swap the channels, and that's what this 2 dots indicate here where they're separate. That's channel 1 is left, channel 2 is right, but then if you go this way, channel 1 is right, channel 2 is left. And you'd wonder, well, why do you want to do that? Well, probably because your sound engineer is going to put things left and right to their perspective from front of house if it's live. If you're on stage, everything's reversed, so you might actually want to reverse everything so that it's from your perspective. So I might kind of play with some placement of things here to get a little more separation on these instruments. Maybe I'll kind of place them according to where they are on stage in relation to me, so I get a better stereo image. And so that's the idea. Very easy to use. If you're trying to play an instrument, you don't want to have to go through menus, banks, or anything like that. Just grab a knob and go. And of course, you can save all this to a preset by holding the preset button until it blinks. Let go. Now it's stored. If I hit the button once quickly, it jumps to another preset, and you got 4 of them. Again, that was something we asked our customers. How many presets do you want? You want 2, 6, 10, 100, 1,000? You know, we got plenty of memory. We could have done 1,000 presets, but why? You know, what was practical? What made sense? So that's why we went with the 4. But you also have basically your working preset. And you notice if I turn a knob, this will start flashing. That means that I've made a change and it's not saved that preset. So if you want to save it, you need to push and hold it again until it blinks. Now it's saved. But say if you made a bunch of changes and then you unplugged, well, that's okay because our mixer actually saves those settings to memory right before the power goes out. And when it comes back up, it's going to come back on exactly where it was and even tell you that you were on preset 1 and you haven't saved it yet. It'll come back up 1 and you notice it's blinking. So exactly the state that it was in when the power went out. So in case somebody trips over your cable and breaks it, or maybe the power goes out, whatever, everything, you're not going to lose anything. And these 4 presets are going to be really expanded with the new app that we're working on, because you'll be able to save settings per mixer as well as settings globally for all of your mixers. And so that way, you may not, if you start using the app, you may not even need to use these presets anymore, because you basically can store them here. And when you have a group come into the studio, or say it's you got 2 different church services and you got 2 different praise and worship bands, so you can basically save all the mixers with the touch of 1 button and recall them with the touch of 1 button. And the app pretty much mimics the mixer, which we thought was kind of the appropriate way to do it. It behaves just the same way. So you can kind of see that. You can grab knobs and turn them. So, anything else? Any other questions? Or
one other thing that I guess I didn't hit on before. We do have a couple of features with the couple of settings in the mixer itself, such as disabling the intercom completely if you want someone to not receive or be able to broadcast intercom at all. Since we have such a limited interface, we actually have to have boot up sequences. So to do something like that, you would pull the power, hold the intercom button as you plug the power back in. Well, just so you know, with the app, you now have shortcuts to those features. You can see we have, if I can get it up here, let's see, intercom and Footswitch connectivity right now. So you can actually toggle those on or off just with the app. It makes it a lot easier than having to boot up your mixer.
And you show them where you can, it shows what, if I can get this to...
Yeah,
the firmware, the current firmware version on this mixer is right there, 1.11, and
I took it off the network.
he's got to disconnect from the network, otherwise it would go out to our website, find the latest version here, and give you the option to download it, and so then you can install it. And you can do it either one mixer per time at a time, or just all of them. And actually, the mixers continue to function. I don't think anybody's gear does that. Ours continue to function as they are being updated, so they don't interfere with your current session. So you literally can update your mixers as the session's going on, and when it gets done, it gives you the option to reboot. If you don't want to reboot, they can keep using it, and it's going to be the old firmware until you do the reboot. But also, if it fails during the update process, it will basically just go back to the firmware that was on there. So you can't brick it. And it'll even do when give you an indication. It'll actually flash all of these LEDs magenta twice to indicate that it tried to boot off of your firmware update, but it didn't complete. So it's reverting back to the original factory firmware. So that way you don't brick it.
And so, one other thing I didn't really touch on before is, and I know the contrast is a little messed up here. It actually looks, crisp, but our camera's kind of blowing the exposure out of proportion. But one thing you can do with the apps, and say you have multiple people running apps, so everyone's controlling their own mixer, which is off stage, you can actually name these channels, which makes it really easy to actually have everyone get the same channel names, as opposed to going through each and every mixer and putting a scribble strip on it, or actually writing with a grease pen on our spots for these labels. So when you have multiple apps open, you can actually name these, say, you know, drums left, next, drums right. And when you have multiple apps, it will beam those out to everybody,
Yeah,
and
I tried
everyone's will have the same name since you are receiving the same 16 channels.
I tried to adjust the camera. I don't know if you can see it any better.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. Exposure might be a little too low now. Yeah, it doesn't like looking at this glossy screen, I don't think. But the mixer itself, you know, functions great alone, but say you wanted to have it off stage and plug the output straight into your wireless transmitter and be completely wireless on stage, you can do that with your phone or iPad. It's really nice. So you actually have every single control that you have from, you know, as you would in the mixer, but you have it from your app. It does every single thing.
I don't know if we talked about these, but we have these new overlays now. It just made me think of it when he was talking about labeling them. For the physical mixer, these are great for recording studios because if you got different groups coming in, you can go ahead and label this and even put the date or the session name up here at the top. And even if you wanted to, you could actually bubble in. There's little bubbles here. You could bubble in where the settings were in case you don't want to save it to memory here, or if you don't have the app. That's just another way you can basically manually save your settings to the actual overlay, kind of where things were at. But these things are great because they're inexpensive. They're just paper, you know, so they are disposable. Or you could probably use a pencil if you wanted to erase them. You know, they're fairly sturdy, but that's a great way to label it and then, you know, swap these things out if you have different groups coming in and out. So we're now selling these guys. I think we're doing them in a pack of 5. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so it is a 5-pack on those overlays. And any other questions or?
Check Facebook.
Well, I guess that's it for now, unless you can think of anything else, Max.
Recap, you know, Footswitch. We have the distro box, the overlays, and the app, and brand new firmware. That's really what we've been focused on right now, is to get these new features out, new products, new features, and make this thing behave unlike any other personal monitor mixer, but exactly the way it should, the easiest possible solution.
Also, our input cards, the AES EBU card, the ADAT card, the Dante card, those are all shipping right now, and the Waves card is in production right now. We'll probably start shipping, Max, maybe in the next, I think we'll have it by AES?
30 days.
Probably about 30 days is what we're looking at. I think we're waiting on a couple of parts there, but all the actual printed circuit boards are at our factory, which is just 6 miles down the street here in Huntsville, Alabama. And so we should probably be seeing those Wave SoundGrid cards here within the month. And I guess that's about it. I hope to see everybody at AES. Max, what booth number are we?
627.
627, booth number 627. AES out in Los Angeles, which is the end of the month. Starts on
27th?
27th, which is
I believe it's the 27th through the 1st.
is it Thursday?
Don't get me in line, man.
check the AES website. We'll be there. Come out and see us. Thanks, guys.
Bye, guys.